Honest J. Nowak. Coming at you live. Alright. A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to some more Honest J. Nowak. And now, I got a few things that I will in fact want to clear up by the end of the day right here. Starting with this one. I already went through 3 different episodes, so why not do more? How about that? For this marathon here at least. Today, let's go ahead and talk about a process that's commonly known by most scientists, liquefaction. If you study earthquakes, then you're probably already familiar with what I'm about to talk about here, but in case you are not familiar with it, then well, listen up. Liquefaction is, simply put, the process of how solids can in fact turn into liquids, especially after enormous vibrations happen in near lithospheric or atmospheric plates, especially within the ground level itself. Earthquakes are generally caused by 2 plates colliding with each other and building up enormous levels of tension until when they suddenly break free, that's when an enormous shock wave gets released. An earthquake, as it's really known as, begins to rumble through the earth and allow anything to tumble. You can expect a lot of things to happen, but if you really take a closer look at how earthquakes can potentially happen, reality would show about how the fact that most plate collisions, especially in the tectonic or lithospheric level of plates themselves that are on Earth, generally when they move around, it's usually very slow. But when they do in fact come into contact with each other and it gets to a point where tension builds up and then finally releases when they break apart, that's generally the biggest part about it. The shock wave that generally gets released with enormous buildups of energy that finally get released into the Earth itself. But when it comes to liquefaction, it's a whole nother story. The process of how something like dirt could turn into mud, mud can turn into quicksand, and quicksand could turn into just plain old water that you can simply fall right into. It does in fact get to that point. There have been plenty of occasions where sometimes an earthquake would rip apart a city so well that very solid levels of things out there, like soil and sand, would eventually begin to turn into extreme levels of liquefied substances. And these substances are known to do a lot of things. They can in fact absorb most things that are directly in the ground above them, thus creating something relative to a cavern or sinkhole. And for the most part, this would in fact be bad news, especially if you're in a house that's built right over, let's say, a mud or sandy area, and liquefaction would tend to occur there. Expect your house to get swallowed up within minutes, or even seconds, depending on how bad it already is. But above all that, you can also expect liquefaction to do a lot of things. It could swallow up cars, swallow up whole people, anything at all. But it is, again, more or less dependent on the kind of environment that you're in, and more or less dependent on the kind of substance, the kind of material that's standing beneath your feet. But yet, when we look at it in most ways, there generally aren't as many earthquakes, let's say, here in the Midwest. And that's because the entire continent that America is sitting on happens to be in the middle of a very large mass of a lithospheric plate itself. And these sort of tectonic plates, they don't necessarily happen to collide with others very often. But yet it is still important to know that if you are in an area that is in fact known to have earthquakes, like let's say Japan, then that's probably where you might as well go ahead and think about safety first. But hey, you know what? At least liquefaction is one thing out there that we can always agree on can be rather dangerous. Well, you know what? Now comes the time for me to move on here because, well, I got lots to talk about here. So if you want to see more go down on my channel, then make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.